And we are live at Stone Soup Poetry. Welcome one and all. Welcome one and everyone. Our feature tonight is Laura Kiesel, who in a rare turn of events will actually be opening up the night after we hear from one of her entourage slash friends. So it's a little bit of a different time tonight, but I thank everyone for doing this. And I think we're going to have a very packed house tonight. I think a lot of people are coming late and asking me to send them the link. But for those of you who do have the link and know of anyone who wants to come along, pass it on. More than welcome to. And I'm just going to shut up right now. It's what I do best when someone has something interesting to read. So we're going to go to member one of the Laura Kiesel entourage, Mr. Andy Oram.
Thank you. Can you let me share my screen? This is a nice poem, and I said it was short.
Yeah, give me a second. Am I pinned? No, I'm not. So let me go into the share screen.
The poem, and it got published, so I hope that you enjoy it too. But it is worth seeing the layout. The layout's a little unusual.
Okay, we got you down. Great. And okay. So I'm gonna remind everyone who's joining on to make sure that they're muted. And you should be good to go, sir. There you go.
Thank you. The poem is called Roster. The default gender is male. The default language is English.
Oh, sorry. I think you just got muted because I was trying to mute someone who had noise. If you can start over, Mr. Oram. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Right. The default gender is male. The default language is English. The default city for poetic edge is New York. The default shirt size is large. The default home heating is natural gas. The default gun caliber is .22. The default mode of death among young men is homicide. The default asylum status is denied. The default lines fissure, gape, engulf, for we do not admit our defaults, we do not atone. Too bad there's no default God. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy. That was lovely. I was wondering where the poem was going at first, but yeah, that was a nice little twist in the first two lines. Unless there's anyone else from Laura Kiesel's entourage who is willing to read, I'm just going to give a reminder for everyone who's here. For anyone who's here for the first time, welcome. If you're a Laura Kiesel aficionado, and I do not blame you for being so, then welcome. But if you're a poetry aficionado in any way, then I do urge you to come and stay at Stone Soup and visit frequently. We meet every Wednesday so far. This may be changing if we're able to have live shows. I'm watching how things are rising, how COVID levels are rising, and being very careful about what to schedule, especially for September, which I would like to schedule because that's the birthday of Jack Powers, and we already had to have a online reading for the 50th anniversary of Stone Soup, which was an amazing event and is viewable via YouTube. It stars Dita Galloway. Now, as for future features for August, I can tell you right away, we have on August 4th, Gloria Mindock, who is celebrating the release of her new book, Ash, which is from Glasslyre Press. A poet, activist, publisher, editor, she does it all, and she is celebrating the 15th anniversary, actually the 16th anniversary of her press Severna Barbara. Give me 1 second. We have on the 11th, I believe he's part of the open mic tonight, so you'll get a little bit of a preview. John Stickney, multiple time author, editor, publisher. He is in the midst of traveling, so he's taking time out of a busy schedule to see us, and we're very grateful for that. And we're grateful for him taking the time both to feature and to give us a sample of his wares for anyone who is interested. And I hope you are. Hi, James. Hi, Jan. Glad you're here. And I'm glad everyone who had problems last time, probably in part because of the weather, are able to join today. I was actually worried last night because we had a 2-second power outage after the thunderstorm, but we're doing okay and we're good to go. So now that I've babbled a little bit, as you know I tend to do, I'm going to ask Laura if she might be ready. If not, I can babble on, or I can bring it to an opener for the open mic.
I'm okay. I think I can go on.
I'll give you one opener courtesy of let's welcome someone who's been the penultimate opener for many weeks since he started coming here when Stone Soup went all online. Let's give a welcome to Mr. John Wesick.
Thank you, Chad. You know, I had the pleasure of reading backed by our own Ethan Meckler with the Garage Poets on this Friday at the Walnut Street Cafe in Lynn, and they're going to be doing it again on August 20th. Here's a heartwarming poem called Decision Theory. I'm making a spreadsheet to decide whether to kill my dog. That big lumbering pile of fur is getting older, and damn it, it's time to run my household like a business. I score each of Dusty's features from -5 to +5, +5 being the best, gazing up with adoring eyes, chin on paw and tail, thumping the carpet, earns Dusty a +5 while drinking from the toilet or knocking over the trash and dragging used Kleenex into the living room, moves him closer to oblivion. I'm in the middle of a computer simulation of future vet bills when Joan notices me in the monitor's blue glow. She just doesn't get it. I weighted each of Dusty's traits according to its importance to account for what I value. I'm not inhuman after all. Why can't she see that the rigor of the binomial distribution and numbers' cool green rationality deliver choices free of passion and prejudice? Besides, she's hosted a sloppier calculation between her ears for months. Eyes squinting and neck straining, I input the remaining data so fast, the mouse jitters like a chihuahua at an espresso bar. The miracle of Moore's law tallies the weighted sum, and the results are terminal. Tail wagging and ignorant of the computer's verdict, Dusty drops a slobbery tennis ball at my feet and nudges my hand with his nose. How can a spreadsheet model loyalty or decency? You're safe, buddy.
Thank you very much, John. And with that, I'm going to make sure everyone is muted. Please do not unmute your mics at this point unless you're the feature. And if you have to ask if you're the feature, you're probably not. So with that, I'm kind of excited to do this because it's been years since I've heard her give a feature, give a reading of poetry, but her writing is no stranger to me, and it shouldn't be to any of you, especially if you read such outlets as the Washington Post, the Atlantic, Salon, and I hope I'm naming all the correct ones. And of course, she has her own Medium page, but enough of that. Let's give a more formal boilerplate style introduction to Laura Kiesel, who I'm very excited to introduce to you, and who is also celebrating a new book release. Laura Kiesel is a longtime poet, essayist, and journalist. Her articles and essays have appeared in The Atlantic, The Guardian, The Washington Post, Vice, Vox, Aussie, Narratively, Salon, The Manifestation, and many others. Her poems have been featured in Upstreet, Medulla Review, Fox Chase Review, Blue Lake Review, Stone Highway Review, Noctua Review, the Naugatuck River Review, and of course, Wilderness House Literary Review. She is originally from Brooklyn, New York, and now lives in the Boston area, where she teaches creative nonfiction, literary journalism, and poetry at Grub Street and the Arlington Center for the Arts. She also lists herself as the, quote, servant of two adorable but demanding cats, and has a habit of staying way too late at night, staying up way too late at night, usually reading. She also likes goats, if you can't tell from the photo on the flyer. She is also the author of a brand new book, Swallowing the Stem of Adam's Apple, which I'm going to include a link to, and I recommend you all get it. Not much more to say, except for some of us are on a schedule. I want to respect that, and I want to respect Laura, who is excited to share her work with you. So, ladies and gentlemen, on a virtual level or on the mic for a couple of seconds, put your hands together for Laura Kiesel.
Hey.
Hey.
There she is.
Yeah, it's really dark in my room right now, so sorry about that. So first I want to say that, Chad, I don't know if you remember, but I featured at Stone Soup a decade ago, almost.
Yes.
Exactly. Almost, I think exactly, because it was summer of 2011.
Yes.
And now it's summer of 2021. So maybe we can make it an every decade thing where I feature.
If I'm still alive 10 years from now, sure. I make no promises.
But I just think it's funny because it was also the summer of 2011. So it's almost exact. I think it was August, and this time it's July, but the end of July. So almost to the very week. It's a decade later. I did not have a book of poetry at the time. But I think that is testament to, it's hard to get published in poetry nowadays, especially if you're not an MFA, especially if you, are not a professor of poetry, to get in any of the big places. So I had been on and off for quite a few years trying to get published at an indie place. And Chad mentioned he has a little chapbook that I handmade when I was in grad school. And I was not in grad school for poetry. I was in grad school for environmental science. But I was so hungry for poetry and to get back to that I actually used the grad school printing thing behind the scenes late at night when no one was there, and snuck it to make my own little chapbook, so that when I moved to Boston, I had this little thing I could sell for a few bucks when I went to open mics. And I was really excited when I moved to Boston because it was the first place. I'm originally from New York City, and it's the first place I lived in years that had a really rich literary and poetry reading scene since moving from New York City. I lived in Vermont for grad school. I lived in the DC area, which had a couple of things, but it was not a lot. And all of a sudden I moved to Boston, and there was you could throw a pebble and you'd hit a poet, which was intimidating, but also very inspiring. And I started writing again because I actually, during grad school and a little before that, I had stopped writing poetry, except for once in a while. So it actually triggered more poems. So I'm going to actually start. My first poem is the first poem in my collection. So this just got published, Swallowing the Stem of Adam's Apple, at the beginning of this year. So of course I got published during COVID, which is funny, but this has been after 5 years of trying to get published, but this is the first poem in that collection, and it's by Unsolicited Press, which is a very great, supportive little indie press of mostly poetry, but they do some other stuff. And I wrote this in a group, an online group, poetry criticism group, Chad, that I believe you were on, like Valerie Loveland and all those folks were on it. So this was from my early years in Boston, writing this in that little circle. It's called Rhythmless, and the first line I have is from a poem from Federico Garcia Lorca, which is, she goes chained to the tremor of a rhythm that has never arrived. We have considered want to be in its bondage, but to rhythm is another thing. I've imagined feet, soles shoelaced with cymbals, and mouth smiling piano key teeth, violin stringed sinews, the sky stretched out with sheet music, with cymbals floating around like snowflakes adrift to reach past the town limits to where the city turns gritty and the ground is strewn with syringes. Morning brings its own music, the sound of spoons clanging against coffee cups, the tea kettle's whistle, the whispers of grandparents against the backdrop of static-lined weather reports. But what if the bondage was waiting for the want, the dawn that brings no bird song? In the city, the skyscrapers may scream their white noise, the traffic jams bullying people into the day's end with brisk back slaps until they reach the gutter and bottom out. But later on, there will be a moon shining its halo on the dark wingtips of black butterflies that flutter manically through the mist of this balmy midnight. Here a woman walks, her bare feet moistened by a mossy path. Chains hug her waist and breasts like large bracelets and are wound into her braided hair. The blade in her hand can't cut through these chains, but chafes against her wrists and glows with the fountains. She expects to hear some score to her drama, an uprush of symphony to announce her as the serpents slide in, but it never comes, and even the advancing snakes are silent, their famished tongues flickering stoically. Flowers spoon limes and swallow their wedges, spraying citrus on her smock. Oleander petals fall as mute as swans. So just really quickly, that line from that poem, the poem is called Passage of the Siguiera. And so that last image of the woman in the fountain is sort of borrowing from what was in that poem. And here's another poem I also wrote in that group. So the first several I think are basically the product of that group. This one's called Fever Dreams. As a child, I suffered frequently from fevers. Laid up on the living room couch with a cold cloth on my forehead, I watched Disney movies and other fantasy films. When I slept, these characters flooded my dreams, where they grew fangs and became less cute. Their bite marks itched me like the hives that sprang up spontaneously on my skin in erratic polka dot patterns, itched me like the chicken pox I got not once but twice in 3rd grade, some now scratched to ragged scars on my skinny shoulders. As young as 6, my dreams were tinged with sex, Cinderella being pawed by Snow White 7 dwarves, Dorothy's dalliances with Scarecrow and Tin Man. To put the fire out, I was tossed sobbing into tubs of ice water, my stepfather's hand firmly pressing my head under as if for the final baptism, as if the first blessing in my infancy was not and would have never been enough. When I awoke sometime later in the melting mock igloo, the air steaming and my hair sizzling like wet electricity, the scorched muscle in my mouth was always still too swollen to allow me to either shut my mouth or scream. So I'm gonna move ahead. I'm gonna skip a couple poems. So I went to school for environmental science, and I actually studied for a couple years to become a wolf biologist. And I always took issue with the fable of Little Red Riding Hood, both because of the way it demonized wolves, but also because of all the misogyny in the fable. It didn't actually start out like this historically, but eventually became this metaphor, like the red cloak was menstruation and a woman's coming of age, and the wolf is your sex drive. And so the idea was the huntsman was marriage to tame the woman. The grandmother that the wolf ate was the innocence. And I kind of balked even at a young age at all these things. So I wanted to write kind of a retelling of Red that was kind of a feminist and wolf positive retelling, but also kind of like embracing sort of erotic elements of the story. So this is a prose poem. I don't write a lot of prose poems, but this is one of them. So this is a little longer than some of my others, but it's called Red. It came on with the howls that sliced through the night like a knife, a blood-stained blade that broke the dam in my belly, releasing rivers of red, the color of my cloak, from between my trembling thighs. The moon was full that night. It glared like a gold coin, partially shrouded by dark clouds that seemed to scratch at its copper face. My mother, alarmed, thought me too young for this affliction, though I was advancing on my 16th year. Adhering to her admonishments, I kept clean as best I could, though the stubborn blood flooded instead of spotted, soaking my skirts and scarring my bed sheets while I slept. I was warned against going into the woods at this time, that it would bring the wild things to come sniffing up my skirts, making them drool more than any meat or bread in my basket could. They would lap me clean and then hard till I'd be nothing but bone. I knew my mother didn't only mean the wolves, but the woodsmen wielding their axes, the ones who butchered the trees every October, leaving a trail of twigs piercing the path that led straight to their modest huts. These men hummed instead of howled, but it sent the same shiver down my spine, leading me to follow the somber sound through the woods to their working groups encircled by the scent of wood smoke and musk. There is one woodsman whose hair and beard are as red as the small death I shed each month. When he hums, the wild howls in the woods stutter and briefly cease, but when they start up again, they entwine with his hum, emerging as a mutual melody so that I can't discern the difference between those beasts and this man. One day, months later, when the cramps come kicking my belly with unusual belligerence, the blood running redder and hotter than fire, I am solicited for an urgent errand. Equipped with a crucifix and a basket full of fresh milk and fruit preserves, I am sent to aid my ailing grandmother. I depart at dusk. Before leaving for my mission, my mother bathed me, rubbed my thighs with mint leaves to mask my scent, inserted a makeshift plug to barricade the blood that wailed in my womb for its freedom. I am told to keep my eyes alert but also averted, to stay off shadowed paths. I am also commanded to keep my cloak at home because the red will draw the wolves. But in secret, I hid it in my basket beneath the food, freeing it and fastening it over my body once I was at the forest's edge. So I go swiftly, my long white arms slicing the wind, the nape of my neck matted with the dark hairs the sweat has planted there. Ignoring instructions, I run, though I was warned this would make me be perceived as prey. Suddenly behind me, I hear a cascade of crunching noises, dry leaves crushed under a dozen leaping paws. Then comes the howling. It starts with a single low baritone moan, but then others join in and it rises in concert to a pitch reached by the highest notes of a string symphony. The moon shivers to the tune, as does my body. I shake so hard as I run among the shadows that the blood bursts free from its barricade. Red runs down my legs and heavily flecks the forest floor in my wake. I do not remember the final fall, just the corner of my cloak catching a low tree branch that sent me tumbling, trailing the blood behind me like breadcrumbs for the creatures following at my ankles. When I awake, I don't hear howls, only a humming. I lie on a wood floor in front of a fire. Besides the cloak draped over my damp body, I am naked. The crimson flow continues, absorbed by the cloak that shares its color. When I stand, I see him watching me, red hair and beard framing feral eyes. They dart out of the shadows and consume me. I know this now. He will lap me bone clean. I should feel fear, but I don't. There are barely any things that are wetter than blood, but there are sounds that shout deeper blushes than what the body can make. There are lips and tongues, deep caverns that hold quivering secrets that can only be expelled when shared. When this happens, the first flowers find the strength to smash through snow and announce spring. When this happens, the rush of blood slows down to hardly a trickle, calmed at last by a worthy diversion. Later on, I am led the way out of the woods by wolves. They caress my clean skirts with their snouts, nuzzle my palms, licking my fingers free of the fruit jam. No more monsters than the moon or woods, they whimper plaintively for my approval. When we reach the hill overlooking home, I plan to go forward, but instead I find a furred collar in my grip. I let it lead me away, to caves where the colors I create will be welcomed, where there are no mothers with their clucking tongues. The woods pull me in, keep me secret, so that all that remains of me is the blood-stained cloak abandoned on the forest floor, and the memory of me as told by the townspeople who continue to whisper of wolves and their hunger. So I'm gonna move ahead a little bit. Let's see. So also I want to mention that poem, when I mentioned that line, the first flowers smash through snow and announce spring, there's actually, that was kind of borrowed from a line from an Anne Sexton poem, erotic poem called The Fierceness of Female. And she has the last line in that poem, which I think is one of the most brilliant end lines in any poem, is she says something like, I raise my pelvis to God so that it may know the truth of how flowers smash through the long winter. And I love that line so much that I wanted to incorporate it into something else, a kind of reference to it. So this poem is called Hair. It was published in Fox Chase Review, I think in 2013, but unfortunately they closed down, though there is now Oxford Review, which is a new journal by the people who did Fox Chase Review. So this is called Hair. Somewhat like a strand of hair gone gray, I attempt to rip you out right at the root. Astonished by the sudden shock of opaque, I gape at the white line, the white sign that tells me something sick is penetrating the shaft. Like a skunk stripes branding my skull, is it my skull or my soul I rip you from? And is it just a single strand or the symptom of many to come invading until my head stands, a canyon of colorlessness, a field of gray grass sprouting up aghast against the white winter? I itch. Could it be dandruff or the snowflakes swooning from the sky and caught in my tangled mass of hair like netted butterflies? I scratch until the skin sloughs off and the bone beneath bleeds. At least the blood puts some color into my braid. Every weed I pluck out produces two more in its place until I've been bleached. The brown and burgundy shades replaced by signs of premature age. I have been blotted out by your betrayal. As all my pastels go pale, the hues and blues of my mood cinder to a cool ice cube void of color. My fingers beg for baldness and trichotillomania takes over. Each yank is like its own small surgery, a tumor taken out. The shoot of the chemo syringe up the tender vein. Each pull is the whip against my Puritan skin. Once a Rapunzel in the making, sloping her hair down the tower, entreating you to climb, a shining head of hair, thickly braided and quite fine. I have severed the staircase, step by step and strand by strand. Once I had a mane of glory, now I wear a wig. So I have like several poems that I feel like are certain themes. Like there's my bitter breakup poems from my 20s, and that was one of them. I might read one more of those if I can find it. It's called Clam Poem. And then I have several poems about like death, my death poems, I call them. So this one's called Clam Poem. Love, the heart is a clam that can make pearls out of sand. You itched me, inched deep into the soft pink flesh of my heart. At each turn, I sweated and coated you until you built to my resistance. Marble smooth and perfect, you were there nestled deep inside where it was warm. Not feeling the effects of salt water that stung my shell with its intentions. Flare-ups in my eyes and lips, only so many leaks could I spring before breathing became difficult, until I drowned. I tried to spit you out, but further you burrowed until a hole formed under my tongue where the major vein lives, until an indent swelled in the raw pit of my pelvis. You hibernated there, caught up in the canyon of my impervious shell, shocked into submission. Further subdued under skin you mistook for satin sheets, you were pristine, baptized by the holy water of my saliva. I let you live and made you a jewel, a virgin gem. I shut myself around you, a closed fist, frightened by outsiders and ready to fight for your defense, eager to keep my treasure. A beast with the beauty inside, I ingested you. Not fully though, I kept you there on the back of my tongue, testing your taste, letting you linger. You outlived me. Smaller but brighter, you went on to better hands and harder flesh. You see the sun now while I am to become another's meal. Love, the heart is like a clam that snaps shut at intrusion. How much more time do I have, Chad? I don't want to take up too much time.
Well, you got at least another 10 minutes, I'd say.
Okay. So I guess now I'll go to the death poems.
There you go.
Yeah. So this is Wish for an Aspiring Herpetologist. This was actually published at Ibbotson Street. I think a lot of people here are probably familiar because it's a local journal. I think some of the people who go to these have published there or read it. I had a friend I went to grad school with. So an herpetologist is a wildlife biologist or ecologist who specializes in reptiles and amphibians. She was studying to do that. She Right after she finished her master's degree, she got engaged and she was about to get married, and she had started a new big job. And then she found out she had stage 3 breast cancer. And so I wrote this poem. She actually did beat the cancer, even though she had only like less than a 50-50 chance, I think, or something like that. We've lost touch, but I wrote this when we were talking and she was first diagnosed. So, and also there's a reference about frogs. Frogs will fully freeze up in the spring. I mean, in the winter, because they have glucose in their blood, they will thaw out in the spring. So it doesn't kill them. So I have that reference in this poem just so people understand it if they weren't familiar with frog biology. Though the tumor was tiny, it didn't stop the cancer from quickly speckling your lymph nodes like the freckled spots found on an otherwise even-colored egg. In my dreams, your fingers fall off like flower petals. Your lips and teeth collapse, smothering your mouth so that you can't call to me. I watch you wither, and when I go to grab your hands, it is my own fingertips that curl and crumble like burning paper. In pictures, you chase tree frogs through the forest. A spotted salamander slinks up your skirt. You smiled and called this a cute flirtation. You who cooed to snakes as though they were kittens, letting them coil around your outstretched arms like lace. Neither of us knew breasts could become malignant before 30. The rumor is that while they are still taught, they can't turn against you. But now, instead of your impending marriage, mortality is on your mind, and your next exam will not be for school, but to gauge your bones for further signs of the sickness. But here's a secret. In winter, frogs don't fully freeze. Their blood slows but doesn't quite stop as they sleep with their souls on hold, breathless in the bottoms of ice ponds awaiting spring. Each blood cell they possess a small miracle because it doesn't burst, but has learned to trick not only cold, but death. I wish the same for you, a long slumber from the cold pain of your cancer, from which you will awake to the healing blush of the sun. When you do, you will erupt an armor of scales, sprout new limbs, and flee back into the forest like a lizard newly hatched and hungry for the dawn. And so I'll continue reading some of those poems. So this next one is a poem about my uncle who helped raise me. He died of a drug overdose. July always reminds me of him because that's when that's his death anniversary. So this poem I thought I'd read in his honor anyway, since it's the anniversary month. The inseam of Uncle's jacket matches the inseam of his coffin. Satin, periwinkle purple, such soft words, such softness inside the dense wood, like some tough fruit, a pineapple perhaps, its skin calloused hard and impervious around its mushy pulp. When the heat permeates the ground, it lasers through the oak wood, sears the skin, and pits out the rot, like when we eat our conquered grapes, our teeth splitting the skin from the flavor. Is that what the worms do? Eat through the sins and leave the seeds for God. The bones left there idly planted in the ground to grow trees and believers. My uncle's baby fine hair combed over his bald spot, covering up the bad spot. We bury the bad things. We leave the worms to seed out the secrets, the bare bones, and then we leave them there for God. But we can't see that much. We need to keep it covert in a coffin. We need some spirit guide to bear it all away, and so dig it deep down inside the swelter of earth. And then this one is the last one that I'll read at this point about death, but my grandmother who raised me got lung cancer. She was a smoker, and I loved my grandmother, but she had a lot of old wives' tales, like don't go out with a wet head or you'll catch pneumonia. Don't walk around, the apartment without socks on a cold day. But then she'd smoke like 2 packs a day. And she would give us hot toddies when we were sick because, she was Irish. So like 10-year-old, she'd give us a hot toddy. So these are just referencing, just to address some of the references in the poem. It's called What Tea Can't Cure. To you, tea was the cure-all for any trouble. Weighed down with milk and white sugar, it coated our throats with warmth, making us speak only sweetness, our eyes luminous with love. But at night, clumsy fingers fumbled the lids off pill bottles, secrets stashed in the backs of cigarette packs. Tobacco smoke was safe, you said, but bracing a bare foot for contact with a cold floor tile or leaving home with a wet head in winter was not something to be dared. Such carelessness causes coughing, spurs the lungs to filled with fluid the way wood streams gorge in spring after the last of the snow melts. Years later, dark flecks would collect inside your chest, a flock of blackbirds beating their rusty wings against arthritic rib bones, a sickness the color of cobwebs, eating your flesh from where you inhale. They sent you home with an oxygen tank we were warned could cause combustion if even the smallest flicker of fire lit up your face. So stubborn were you at the thought of a life without smoking that you set about to die. Within weeks, you were a woman of wires, which kept you barely breathing but alive, a network of cylinders that sucked like leeches at your opened orifices. In the hospital, your hands swallowed by white mittens the size and shape of boxing gloves, Velcroed tight against the wrist to keep from clawing your way to the final freedom, draining you of your remaining dignity when you tried to touch my face, the rounded glove tip bouncing gently off my cheek like a marshmallow. You were itchy, I could see, and so I scratched your neck and face as I did for my cat when he came home with a plastic collar after surgery to keep him from licking his own wounds raw. When the nurses left, I took the glove off and we held hands as your eyes closed. I watched you sleep for the final time, my courtesy tea untouched on the table, losing its heat with each passing second. So I'm gonna read, if I can find it, well, I don't actually need to read it. So I actually memorize all my poems, but it's hard when people are staring at me to recite from memory. But this is the titular poem that the title of the book refers to, Swallowing the Stem of Adam's Apple. It's called Stem. A lot of my other poems, not so much the ones I've read tonight. I was raised Catholic. I did 12 years of Catholic school. I'm a recovering lapsed Catholic, but I think one thing I got from that as a poet is a lot of biblical imagery and symbolism I like to play with. So this is called Stem, and it's obviously, this is a reference to the Adam and Eve allegory. I would love to feed you heaping spoonfuls of words, frothy with sincerity, and watch your Adam's apple jut up and down with the ingestion. And would you please then take me by the hips, still hungry, cajoling couplets in your need, take sensuous sips till your belly bloated with my sweetness. And when it is done, I want a serpent moment, our forked tongues splitting rivers into streams, into trickles of timepieces, then tongue-tied, the subsequent silence still articulate. And to seal it, I want to remain naked, a rebellion against the god of shame, proving we not only ate the flesh of Adam's apple, but also swallowed the stem. And this is, on a happier note, this is my ode to music. It is all summed up by the things we miss. The sweat soaked up by our balled up shirts in summertime, the seats of cars that smell of cigarette smoke and barbecues, the rumble of an engine as the automobile peels up the New York State Thruway and transforms into the Mass Pike, giving way to mountain ranges and raw cadences of sky, ripped apart by violent sunsets that bleed into the concrete. It is the growling in my groin as it reverberates with the rock lyrics on the radio and my hair snarled around the bedpost of my lover's bedroom or flattened by his damp palms in loose strands against the sheets. It was once a habit of mine to run in the rain. The beads of water slipped down my skin till I felt like a vertical fish that had exchanged gills for ears. I prayed for rain, dreamed of it. Rain and music, some whiskey to warm the bowl of my belly, or a cold beer to press against my temples and cool my flushed face after a day spent swimming, the twitch of my fingertips typing or sprawling across paper, spilling a cascade of crooked calligraphy to stain tattered notebooks and bar napkins. It is the slow swaying of hips, the stone-hard sureness of bones. It is a becoming, a perpetual state of becoming, birth and blood sewn in between the indexes of guitar strings and piano keys, thunder becoming a drumbeat becoming a heartbeat, the horns and harmonicas that scream and squeal at a pitch higher than but in the same context as our human voices. If I could sing, I would open my mouth now and let loose the banshee wail my body knows, as it recalls the memory of my birth and becoming and the rapture of redemption. So Is there time for one or two shorter poems, Chad?
Definitely.
Okay, I'm just going to read a couple poems that are not in the book to show that, kind of also prove to myself that I still write sometimes. So I'm just going to read a couple of short ones that I've written in more recent years, because most of these poems I actually wrote, with the exception of a couple. I mean, this manuscript from like anywhere between 20 and 10 years ago, a lot of these poems, but these are ones that I've written in the past couple of years. So this first one is called just simply period poem. I had a hysterectomy a couple of years ago, and I had a lot of health issues that caused me to get it. And I wrote this poem before I got the hysterectomy, but this is sort of, people who say I've read this poem to them understand why I made the decision to get rid of my uterus. I no longer want my womb. More than once a month, it wages war against me. Instead of simply shedding its lining, it lets its tendrils spread like strands of spider web, reaching and etching deep into bladder, bowels, other organs, blooming like tiny tumors, the color and shade of rose petals. My belly is taut with battle. When the cramps come, I am an eternal thunderstorm. Each time the clouds collide, I rain, but blood instead of water pours out of me. I am left with the gore, to wash and wring it out of my clothes, to clean up the crime scene. Haven't I already known enough violence in my life? My body claims too many casualties. My body buries the corpses and then resurrects them month after month. I am a haunted morgue, a map of angry highways and Superfund sites. When the doctor drew his diagram, he showed me how each endometrial cell erupts and takes root, sprouts thorns into nerves, becomes itself akin to a nerve, entwines me like a lover, like ivy creeping up my pelvic walls, splintering even into my spine, into my lungs. The blood eventually invades my bones. My bones sigh and scream like ghosts, waking me up with nightmares full of their shattered protests. They can remove it all, they say. They will scrape at the livid red, excavate each endometrium. They will set fire to my insides and then put the fire out. They will pull the scorched, still smoking weeds from my body until I am like a shiny new surface. Then my womb, like a balloon, will be deflated and yanked out from between my thighs, the closest I will ever come to giving birth. But I will not be handed the bloody bag to cradle. I will have no newborn to feed or fawn over. Instead, they will throw it out in the nearest trash can in a bag marked biohazard. The exorcism done, they will claim my house clean. I will walk away, but I will wonder always when the war really over? And I'll just read one more, and this one's very recent, like just from like less than a year ago. I was asked by a therapist to really think about why, and I think a lot of us have this, like why we get angry, why anger is our, instinctual emotion. And so I wrote this poem when I was thinking about that. It's called Why Anger? Because it keeps my bones warm, heating them to the point so that outsiders would singe their fingers off if they tried to touch my soft spots, where I could tear into pieces or melt myself into salt water and make myself whole again. Eyes like embers, piercing pitch dark, making my own light. When I was a girl, I almost drowned so many times in my own tears. My grandmother then taught me to swim, to tread the waves and let them ride me, and then to steer myself back to shore and stand. Afterwards, my skin would be lobster red and peel into shreds off my shoulders, and I'd emerge in a new alabaster form. That is anger. Later on, as a teenager, I would find the solace of my bed and not want to wake up. The world was cruel and it was crushing me. Sorrow was a drug, and I let it whisper to me that life wasn't worth living. I believed her as she slipped soft pink pills under my tongue and the light extinguished from my eyes. But then anger smacked sorrow down. She shot me through with an odd energy, a will to live, even if it was to scald every other living thing around me, to boil them down to bones if necessary, for playing any part, even peripherally, in my pain. Anger came to me again and again, and then finally it never left, and it irked me into caring. Its electricity always lit me top to toes, flooded out the fright. It made me brave, braver than I'd ever be without it. But anger is a fraught friend, a feral animal never quite tamed even to its owner. It turns on me at times, lets me know its heat can eventually engulf me, reduce me to cinder. So we circle each other carefully, warily, a dance or a duel. I can't decide which, and neither can it. Sometimes it is a tenant, other times it is more than that, an organ or some sinew. It's red the blood of my body, the fascia that connects all my insides. If I am not careful, it could become a cancer and eat everything, all of me. But still, anger is what keeps the cold out. The creeping tendrils of a loneliness and sorrow so deep that, like a well, I couldn't ever escape it, even if I entertained it only briefly. I know this about myself. It is the soft spot of my core that has not yet turned black, like that in the middle of a skull of a newborn baby, that if it was penetrated would petrify me solid, collapse me in one terminal puncture. And so anger is the more agreeable alternative. Anger is my angel. It has soft, warm wings flickering with small flames and only the smallest set of horns. So I guess I'll end there.
Put your hands together 10 to 30 audible times, or just press the like emoji, or do a lot of emojis in the chat. Miss Laura Kiesel.
Thank you. Yeah, and my poem's available on Unsolicited Press, Swallowing the Stem of Adam's Apple, Barnes and Noble. I don't like Amazon, but if you want to go on Amazon, it's there too.
I put in the link for your book.
Oh, great, thank you.
And if you have a PayPal or a Venmo account that you want people to make a donation to tonight, I recommend you put it down there as well.
Okay, yeah, I'll try to get that. I think it's just Laura Kiesel, but I have to look. And then I also do have a Patreon if anyone ever wants to, I don't know if people are familiar with Patreon, but that's usually a monthly thing. So sometimes people do micro payments like $5 a month as well. So I'll put the link in a little bit.
Sounds great. Well, thank you very much. This is worth the 10-year gap wait for you to finally come back and to entertain us. I'm glad we have it for prosperity now. For this is going to be available on YouTube by tomorrow before 9.
Oh God. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, maybe
it's okay.
Maybe that should come with a warning. But anyway, but this is don't worry, they're not laughing at you. They're laughing at me. I've been doing this for a while, but no, this I think it's great. Stone Soup's definitely going to be going through some changes once the pandemic ends, and we figure out how to sustain this between years 50 and 75. So it's going to be a different animal, but at least for the duration of the time we're here online, which we can't really control, I'm glad I've been able to get as many people as I can to, many friends as possible to, give an example of what Stone Soup's been like over the years. So I appreciate your contributions, Laura, and I hope I hope a few of you can definitely donate. Consider the Patreon if you haven't. We haven't talked about Patreon for a while because the last two people to use it were Tony Brown and Rick McIntyre. But even donating a dollar a month can have a cumulative effect. I know there's plenty of content creators out there who wouldn't be able to do what they do if it weren't for the $1 a month contributors. So she sends you a link to that. Definitely check it out. The link to Unsolicited Press and Laura's poems is already in the chat now, and I'm sure she'll add more as we continue. So we just had the feature, so now we're going to the this is the unusual process, but I'm glad because I know a lot of people might not have been able to be on the call for the entire time. Non-poets are very busy. All poets sit around and we just sit around and go hungry, so we have time to kill, but other people might not. So I appreciate everyone's patience. I appreciate everyone's willingness to flip the script a little bit. We started with Andy Oram, who actually hope comes back someday. And we heard from John Wezick. Up next, I love how with the open mic, I don't get anyone. I just assume who's gonna be reading and who's not, and I just put them in a random order. So I'm a producer now, I guess, in addition to host and whatever the hell else I am. So no one knows when they're gonna read exactly. So she's gonna be very surprised when I call her name next. Let's welcome up Patricia Kerrigan. Past Don't Sue feature, a recent author, buy her books.
Thank you. All the Way, inspired by Billie Holiday. In old photo albums, Kodak blinks archived, stiffened smiles and postures. The commands of cheese documented life's hidden potholes, his mom's parents taking turns at the wheel. Some pages had bent edges, others retired from plastic spirals. Some photo corners MIA, others on their last grip. He touched the photo of his mom, innocence at the age of 2. She grew up to be an outsider, a single mom, taught to serve, live for others, not herself. Never draw outside the lines or speak out of turn. But she was his mom, his redwood tree amid the maples and oaks, his broken mom with infinite strength and love, deeper than the Atlantic and Pacific. He touched a photo of himself, innocence at the age of 2, pre-selfie days before bullies tried to steal his power. He fought back, went all the way to the top of his class, graduated with honors, won a scholarship to NYU, started his IT business, survived the NYC lockdown. He'd hum along to our favorite song, Lady Days All the Way, say to himself, thank you, Mom. You were the tallest tree and deepest ocean. Rest in glory, Mom. Rest in power. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Can you say that now in a Scottish accent? If I'm a producer now, I think producers say things like that. I'm not sure. I'm joking. Anyway, enough of my nonsense. I'm really happy that everyone's here for the open mic. Who are we going to go to next? Yes, the lovely Rita Rose. Again, shock and
Okay.
surprise.
Yes, a shock and surprise. I'm absolutely enjoying tonight. Now, about a week or two ago, I start putting together this fun piece. I'm an Alfred Hitchcock fan. And so I tried to twist and turn everything he ever, every movie. And this is the fun piece that I came up with. It's called Cameo, homage to Sir Alfred Hitchcock. Roll camera, sound, action. A dark silhouette crosses the cinematic screen. Legendary film director Alfred Hitchcock bids good evening. Hitchcock's artistic lens serves as his canvas, painted our visual pictures like no other. Hitchcock tantalizes our emotions. In every shot, we sense his suspenseful presence, the thrill in every frame. He is adamant we come along. We are spellbound, willing voyeurs, whether you are strangers on a train, young and innocent, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Rebecca, Monty, or have trouble with Harry, you will shriek murder when Hitchcock whips you into a frenzy. So join me now, delight at being the peeping Tom you are, as we share the 50mm lens. New to Manhattan, you are the lodger in a high rise. Across the courtyard, you see apartment number 17. Each night, a voluptuous hair-coiled blonde walks about in her negligee. But tonight, a rotund shadow of a man is shouting, hands in motion. He delivers a death blow. Your fantasy girl goes down. The lady vanishes. Bloody binoculars flung, they dangle from the rear window by the torn curtain. The psycho is in her apartment. Instinct dictates, phone police, recover evidence. Being a skilled cragsman, you secure a rope and scale her building wall. Descending, you are aware you may sabotage the investigation. You swing north By Northwest, vertigo takes hold. There has been an error in judgment. Cops will collar you. Prime suspect number one. Suspicion casts the shadow of a doubt. You have become the wrong man. But please, enough with the diatribe. Retrieve the blood-stained glasses. The villain's prints are on them. And dangling above the street, you see a man waiting to use a phone booth. Another man carries a violin. He missed the bus. And across the avenue, a green neon sign flashes. Its outline is reminiscent of the saboteur. Your mind is playing tricks. This is no time to get stage fright. There is no lifeboat coming for you. You repel. Halfway there, you reason. Grab the bloody binoculars. You find an unlocked window. A man is drinking champagne. Another in a black coat smokes a cigarette. You rope down. The birds fly overhead. They take a dump on your skull, on the man who knew too much. Again, you descend. You must procure the blasted binoculars. Repel and you wonder, was this a family plot? Is the sexy blonde a foreign correspondent? Or is she an opportunist? Worse, a spy. Snatched are the binoculars. Your feet hit the pavement. You walk the 39 steps to the building front. Policeman, Officer MacGuffin aims, shoots. You go down. Dropped are the blood-spattered binoculars. Life fleets. You have second to ponder. Was the blonde really worth it? Thank you.
Very nice. And who? Let's see. Is Jan Rowe available tonight? There she is. Just have to unmute yourself.
Thank you. This is from the Black Seed Weekly that comes out every Tuesday. We're 9 to 10:30 in the basement of St. Paul's, Tremont Street, across from Park Street T. This is a rough draft, and after everything tonight, I'm kind of embarrassed to read something so rough, but here it is. Well, anyway, these weeklies go into quarterlies. It's called We Are All Berta Caceres Now. 3 weeks after then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton visited Honduras, the democratically elected President Zelaya was removed from office. The USA supported a right-wing paramilitary dictatorship. The USA called this a diplomatic coup. Hillary said that the question of a military coup was a moot point, so minor that she deleted the question of the US supporting a right-wing coup. When her hardback book came out in paperback, she deleted the question of the USA overthrowing another government. But you can read about it in her ebook. Berta Caceres was assassinated, murdered by 7 men who went to her house, coordinated by a West Point graduate who was the head of the dam project she led the opposition to. This West Point grad was found unanimously guilty by the Honduran Supreme Court. Maybe our own Supreme Court can cancel the verdict. Doesn't the USA have the right to eliminate all opposition? Thank you. I'm getting so
Thank you, Jan. And if he's still available, it's always hard to find him on the map here because he never has a picture. But let's unmute him and let's hear him now, Mr. Chris Fitzgerald. Mr. Chris Fitzgerald, if you may unmute yourself. I just muted you because I tried to press the ask to unmute button. So there you go.
This is the piece I was supposed to do last week. It's the second half of a piece. I read that 70% of the 20 to 30-year-olds now meet on the internet. That's how they date now. And I feel so horrible about that. So the first half was about when I was in my 20s and 30s and meeting women and clubs and alcohol and all of that. But this is now the second half. For the sober inclined, there was the escalator. We are talking, brothers and sisters, your major retail stores, your major transit centers, Filene's, Jordan Moss, Sears Rosebox, South Station, Park Street, Harvard Station, all of them filled with young women, good-natured, open-minded, generous to a fault on the escalators. It was said 20 homeless people slept in hotels every night because of the generosity of the young escalator women. And they were fun. God, were they fun. I remember one incident, Park Street Station. 3 fresh-faced 18, 19-year-old women, just like me, just got off the escalator. I was 20, I think. They asked me, it seemed like in unison, did I know how to get to Harvard? I said, of course I do. Study hard. Your friends will want to go out drinking, smoking, farting around, having a grand old time, not you. You're going to hit the books. When they call you at the door, Mary, we're going out, drinking, smoking, farting around, come with us. You say thank you, but no. 2 more books to read before I sleep. The 2 books are William Shakespeare and The Royal Ass Kisses and Pimple Poppin' by the Pygmies. Now out in paperback, published by Paul Putnam and his sons, Percy, Peter, Palmer, and John Boy. One of the young ladies responds, Harvard Square. We're going to Harvard Square, not Harvard University. Oh, that's the last stop of the train, northbound. Sorry for all the extras, but I can tell they enjoyed my spiel and I enjoyed delivering it. I have 100 escalator stories, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention sometimes the escalators would break down. I would then come in contact with the stair climbing women. Different breed entirely. I'm now admitting to a prejudice. I would take 1 escalator woman over 5 stair women any day of the week. I know at the end of the day, the women who climb the 60 stairs were probably healthier and better shape. But is that central to the dynamic? I would take the relaxed, good-natured, escalating, riding women. That's me. My whole life has been based on the approval of women's faces. So that's why I always needed the immediate facial response. It told me where to go next. That's what stimulates growth. That's what pushes the language forward. The face-to-face. That is what puts a serious dent in lives. When I was 10 years old, there were 5 35 to 40-year-old women. When they looked at me and said my name, I knew that 4 of them anyways, they liked my being friends with their sons. Not just that, I could hear that they thought it was pretty cool being on the planet same time as me. The 5th, no 30 to 40-year-old woman ever spoke to a neighbor's kid with a more beautiful kindness and generosity. I was the only kid in the neighborhood you were allowed to shovel a sidewalk. $5, 8 to 15. To call her wonderful is such an understatement. One of those 4 other women was the first woman I considered gorgeous. She was the handsomest, male or female person in the neighborhood. I discovered how stunning she was when I was 10. This isn't a Hollywood or a Freudian. We're all sex toys from 5 to 70. No erections involved. This is about how amazing life can be. I was returning her son's basketball. Rang the bell. She came halfway down the stairs to meet me. She had a light summer dress on, sweat on her face. I was stunned by her appearance. Gorgeous. I just knew there wasn't any other place for me to be. I was happy just to be in the same room or hallway as her. Gorgeous. We adopt Hollywood definitions. Gorgeous. Buttocks and boobs, boobs and buttocks. That's not what gorgeous means. It's a French 13th, 14th century word. It didn't refer to women. Elegance, French royal court, refinement. But 20 years later, when I'm in love with a gorgeous woman, I discover its real meaning, real definition. You not only like hands with hands, faces against faces, bodies against bodies, just love being in the same room as that person. You don't even have to touch. You don't care what's going on outside, be it nuclear war, tsunami, 8/7 earthquake, those stay on the back burner. The elimination of death is a nuisance. Your life is full. Time itself is removed. I do not know if love can go any further. Thank you. Did you hear that clearly?
We did, thank you. And Who do we have next? Thank you, Chris. And let's see who we have next. Yes, we have one of our phone participants. We have some people who are not online per se, but they can join us through the magic of the telephone. And the first person up has been part of our call since just about the very beginning. I'm so thankful for that. She was actually in recovery with an injury, and she was participating from her bed then, and I'm so glad she is here with us now. Let's welcome up. Let me help her unmute because it's a little bit of a different setup. So let's welcome up Carol Weston.
Thank you. Well, ships, look into the fog of that dark harbor of your being. You will see the contour of great ships that are waiting. Instant. This instant is the space over the candle flame where no flame shows, and everything that enters here burns into ashes.
Thank you, Carol.
If you should fire me from the job, you could not fire me from the fire that lashes me internally. And last, dear roommate, rope, you do not understand why my friend Joan wound you around her neck, nor why she jumped. Thank you.
Yay, Carol.
Thank you, Carol. Our next person up, also joining us by phone, I'm going to ask her to unmute by pressing *6. She was out for last week, but she's back this week. Let's welcome up Nancy Dodson.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Impressions. Orange tongues, flames. Dwellings, winds burned up. People and creators were crucified. Pray for Easter comes. Climate change happens. Southwest floods. Floods encompass California, Oregon, Canada. Put out fires. Flooded people die. Wet property damaged. Hopeful of survival. Pray for Easter comes.
Thank you so much, Nancy. And last but not least of our phone crew tonight, I'm going to unmute her now. I think she's still on. Let's welcome up Miss Laurel Lambert. And it looks like she might not be on. Well, I'll double check with her later. But for now, let's move on to, who do we have? Oh, yes, we have a glimpse at our feature in a couple of weeks from now on August 11th. Let's welcome up Mr. John Stickney.
Thanks, Chad. I just gotta say the phone-in people are killing it. That's such good poetry every time Carol and Nancy read. It's just incredible. So this is a poem that comes out of the heat of the moment It's pretty hot where I'm at, and it's called Busy. Culled from Persephone's hive, like a swarm stalled on the interstate, we smell of fever. Let us stop right here and set up shop in Honey Lane, out there in the garden. Bees pollinating their way to bee heaven under wild moons and red, red roses, right before Persephone's clouded eyes. Thanks.
Thank you, John. And be sure to catch him 2 Wednesdays from now, August 11th. And before that, of course, we have Gloria Mindock. And hopefully we're going to have more reasons to, even more reasons for you to check out Stone Soup as we keep on counting down to Jack Power's birthday in September. And if we're lucky, a live performance. For now, let's focus on the present because there's many wonderful poets at present. And here comes one of them. We have Mr. Jason Wright. For those of you who haven't checked out oddballmagazine.com lately, there's been a lot of new entries, a lot of new columns. And Jason Wright's Jagged Thought poem column is every Tuesday at 1 o'clock without fail. And check out today's Stone Soup. Stone Soup. Check out today's Oddball Magazine. We have Mega Sood for our 1 o'clock poet. And before that, we had, even though I put it together, I have to actually look at the magazine. Otherwise I forget everything. We have, Marsha Johansson was our 11 o'clock poet. It's an all contributors Wednesday every week. And we love giving the space to the contributing writers. And of course, we invite you to submit if you haven't already, although many of you on this call have. Without any further ado, the publisher and the head of the Oddball Foundation, Mr. Jason Wright.
Thanks, Chad. There are many poets, and I am one of them, as you have said before. There's been many performances on this open mic, and that's another one. No, but honestly, a little quick call for submissions. We're planning a zine, a oddball zine, and our call for submissions is open. So send us your most interesting poetry and art for this zine that we're creating. We also have a chapbook contest for a small fee. You can send your book in to be picked. We're reviewing them now, and the winner will be published by Oddball Magazine Publishing. So those are two things. Also, if you know anyone who does short films or music videos, independent music videos, send them to our 3TV column. Or the movies are actually being, we have a oddball screening room where we have a film critic basically going through these films, and we have one being published tomorrow. There's a lot going on at Oddball, and another thing we were thinking of doing was very interesting is sounds kind of hard. I don't even know how to put it into words, but if someone has like a unique hobby or something that's unusual, to write about it and send it to us, and we'll publish it. I don't know what we're calling it, hobbies or something, or just like niches or whatever. Or if someone likes, I give the example of someone likes bottle rockets. Well, write about bottle rockets and send it to us. We're quirky like that, and we want to have a varied magazine. So when you go to it, you're like, what am I gonna get? And that's the point of this magazine, is you shouldn't know what you're gonna get. I don't think that anyone's figured out our algorithm. Maybe Chad has. We have a little bit of an algorithm where, if you check out Mondays, you'll get comic strips. You check out Tuesdays, you'll get my stuff. You check out Thursdays, you'll get Liza, and Friday you'll get Bruce. And then Wednesdays you get other poetry. But on Thursdays you might get a music video or a short film. So there's a lot. So we want to keep on varying it up. And I want to thank Chad for all the great work he does. There's a lot of editors, and he is one of them. So this is my poem from today. Real quick, It's about how scary and how necessary technology is, and how, there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of stuff going on in the world, and it's hard to trust anyone or anything. And unfortunately, if we didn't have Wi-Fi right now, you wouldn't be seeing me. And if we didn't have phones, you wouldn't be hearing me. So it's kind of like a necessary evil. So this is called Jagged Thought 382, Mother of Invention. Write the unlimited, the gifted uplifted, flow like golden ships in Cabernet seas, shine like magenta stones clinging to a chalice, wish the sun to cool you and the moon to warm you, think explosive and kaboom. The world I see is divided, misguided, and a lie. I see a vaccinated nation waiting for an unvaccinated nation to catch up, play patient, end the frustration. I see so much misinformation that my mind has gone on vacay, a bright holiday with dismay that someday might come back and say, hey, everything's okay. But right now it seems a little patronizing to the nation to say everything is okay. And it is frustration boiling over with those vaccinated and the unvaccinated. I took the stick. It has kept me from getting sick, but others didn't. Staying persistent that the big business of sickness brings us to the brink of this madness. The land of the free and the home of the brave sounds more and more of a brand to me. Red and white merchandise, blue and red party lines and picket signs. And as I grow older, I see a little less into the future. I see myself growing, gaining more college, braced with more knowledge, then increasing debt that takes half my check, insurances for diseases I don't have yet, an IRA because nothing is guaranteed anymore. My pension, my retirement at 65 seems like a lie. 65, that's 2035. Will I be in the unemployment line, soup line, or will I shine? So as I write this, how do I make sense of this? What is this? You want it all, but you can't have it. We want the truth, but we can't manage. If we knew it at all, would we want to go through with it? Even questioning it sounds stupid. But now, what do we do with it? What is it? And how do I even live with it? It's a spider in a sewer. It's blood signed rent checks. It's a clown serving billions. It's diabetes dwelling in our Snapchats. What is it? It's sex in a laundromat. It's commercials. It's visions of your day when you were resting. It's like your dreams are now television. And even when you were sleeping, you are still scrolling. That's what it is. It's a technological supernova, drunk off waveform Wi-Fi, and it's scary as hell. But there is no other option. I don't see one. Unplug, unsubscribe, uninstall, move. There's a love I have for the comfort of technology. At the same time, I would miss it if one day it was all taken from me. A real catch-22. Can't imagine a world without Wi-Fi. You wouldn't be reading this poem. It's kind of stupid to be complaining about something I am completely relying on. I guess that's what it is. It's a complete untrust for the mother that is nursing us. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. I wasn't able to get a hold of Miss Lambert. I think she's off the call. So unless there's anyone who joined late that isn't just a member of the Laura Kiesel entourage and who wants to read, then I think all we have, and put in the chat if you do, but I think the only person left would be, here he is, would be Mr. James Van Looy, the poet who is also a poet columnist every Thursday. You can check out his poem column, It's All One Thing, which is published every Thursday morning without fail, 11 o'clock. I think our longest standing columnist since Oddball got its overhaul, when 2013, 2014. It's been great to have his work in here this whole time I've been editing Oddball.
He hasn't missed one in 10 years.
Yes, good God. Oh God.
Crazy.
And of course, before he was an Oddball columnist, he was a Stone Soup regular and still remains so, thanks to modern technology. It's great to have him, and hopefully before the year's over, we can actually get a live performance of his Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. That was one of the scrapped features right before the COVID lockdown happened. That was planned and then got called off. Hopefully we'll get that back. That's one of the ones I have slated. Let's welcome up Mr. Van Looy.
Thank you, Chad. So I have a piece here that came out of a Black Seed writers group prompt. and the prompt was Seeing Things. So that's the title of this, Seeing Things, and it has a quote in Dutch that goes with it. Niets is zo mooi als zien. Niets is zo mooi als zien. And here's the piece. Apparently, my great-grandfather's cousin, Jacobus van Looy, in English, like me, James, had a thing about seeing, speed of light, quick visual scan, now even more dominant, rampant, even over other senses in screen era, time of instant information retrieval search, algorithmic order of corporate private free speech for mass information when every week is a vigil for peace and human rights, inalienable, all men created equal, when little Jacobus, an orphan in Wieshouse Municipal Orphanage, who came to so hate the rude and blau, the red and blue striped sleeves he had to wear from age of 5 as sign of the death of his mom and then his dad, leaving him a public charge to regents and regentesses, and on the status of orphan, publicly reinforced with dress, second half 19th century, how difference in children's perception of it reinforced by, yes, color, visible social signal to all the Bouten Kinder outside children who attended the Wieshouse school, were still somehow old Jacobus learned enough to become an impressionist painter, an experimental writer, whose model became, according to the critics, niets is zo mooi als zien. Nothing is so beautiful as seeing. Okay, and here I got a song for you. Roll out the barrel, we'll have a barrel of fun. Roll out the barrel, we've got the blues on the run. Zing, boom, terrero, ring out a song of good cheer. Now's the time to roll out the barrel, for the gang's all here. There is a tavern in the town, and there my true love sits her down, and drinks her wine as merry as can be, and never thinks of me. Fare thee well, for I must leave thee. Do not let this parting grieve thee, and remember that the best of friends must part, Adieu. Adieu, kind friends, adieu, yes, adieu. I can no longer stay with you. I'll hang my heart on the weeping willow tree, and may the world go well with me. Zing, boom, terrero, ring out a song of good cheer. Now's time to roll out the barrel, for the gang's all here.
And a musical number to take us home. Thank you so much, James, and thanks to everyone who participated in the Stone Soup Open Mic. And of course, thank you for the person who was who was our feature for the first half of our night together, Laura Kiesel. Another round of applause for her, virtual, mod, pantomime, or otherwise. And be sure to grab her latest book, Swallowing the Stem of Adam's Apple, that's available from Unsolicited Press, and I'll be sending a link out. Actually, there is a link in the chat, which I may as well repost, but I'll be posting that on the board tomorrow. As another reminder, there are plenty of links here. In particular, there's the Patreon link where you can support Laura for as if you are a member of Patreon. It's very easy to sign in with. I believe your Facebook account is just one way you can do it, and support her for even like a couple of dollars a month. It's if all of us did that, it would go a long way, because there are a lot of people who rely on the smallest of donations to keep going, or at least make their life a little less aggravating being a writer. And of course, there's a PayPal link in the chat. And so much more. You should go on to Laura Kiesel's site, where there are links to her various articles. She has a Medium page, and a lot of her articles have gone viral. And I believe she just got employed to help produce and research more articles. So with any luck, we'll be seeing more and more of her work as we move forward. And if you want to friend her on Facebook, that'll give you some alerts to when her stuff has been published. And just support her any way you can. And we'll do everything we can. And Laura, thank you very much. Oh, it looks,
Thank you. Thanks.
It looks like we have a surprise guest. It's funny. I just got a little ping from my, let's see, who do we have? Yes. It is John Sturm, who is connecting via audio and can't even hear me introduce him. John, are you there?
I am here.
We were just ending the night, but it would be great if you wanted to do a surprise performance of something. You orator extraordinaire, you.
What would you like?
Well, what do you have on hand?
Well, I was planning to start with something from Abraham Lincoln.
We might as well. Well, my request was going to be My Lumps from the Black Eyed Peas. So your suggestion sounds much better.
But I don't know that one.
Well, how many people know Lincoln? Oh, wait, that's not a good example. All right. Let's have you get your video on, do your best Kilroy impression, and let's hear what you got, sir.
We all declare for liberty, but in using the same word, we do not all mean the same thing. With some, the word liberty may mean for each man to do as he pleases with himself and the product of his labor. While with others, the same word may mean for some men to do as they please with other men and the product of other men's labor. Here are two not only different but incompatible things, called by the same name, liberty. And it follows that each of these things is by the representative parties called by two different and incompatible names, liberty and tyranny. The shepherd drives the wolf from the sheep's throat, for which the sheep thanks the shepherd as a liberator, while the wolf denounces him for the same act as the destroyer of liberty, especially as the sheep is a black one. Plainly, the sheep and the wolf are not agreed upon a definition of the word liberty, and precisely the same difference prevails today among us human creatures, even in the North, and all professing to love liberty. Hence, we behold the process by which thousands are daily passing from under the yoke of bondage and hailed by the same as the advance of liberty and bewailed by others as the destruction of all liberty. Could go on to some Emily Dickinson if you'd like.
Let's close out with that. That'd be perfect. I haven't heard Emily in a while.
My life closed twice before its close, it yet remains to see if immortality unveil a third event to me. So huge, so hopeless to conceive as these that twice befell. Parting is all we know of heaven and all we need of hell. And another. Just lost when I was saved, just felt the world go by, just girt me for the onset with eternity when breath blew back, and on the other side I heard recede the disappointed tide. Therefore, as one returned, I feel odd secrets of the line to tell, some fit sailor skirting foreign shores, some pale reporter from the awful doors before the seal. Next time to stay. Next time the things to see, by ear unheard, unscrutinized by eye. Next time to tarry while the ages steal, slow tramp the centuries and the cycles wheel.
Thank you so much, John. Fantastic. I'm glad
Thank
you finally.
you. Sorry I wasn't here for more time.
Well, I'm glad you finally came on, and I'm glad you were able to help close this out. And then thanks to everyone who came tonight. I ask anyone on video to just do the obligatory wave as we wave goodbye to Laura Kiesel for a fantastic night. Definitely, there's a link to her PayPal. I'll be including that tomorrow where you can directly pay. There's a link to her. There's links to her books. There's links to her Patreon. Do whatever you can to help support her and to give her your thanks for a wonderful feature tonight. And check this out on YouTube tomorrow between 8 and 9. And I think that's it, guys. Thank you so much. Enjoy
What
your
about
evening.
tomorrow night?
What's that?
Did you say something about tomorrow
Oh,
night?
YouTube. Just the YouTube videos going up tomorrow morning between 8 and 9.
Okay.
Other than that, thank you guys very much. The show's over. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.